Okay, so we'll proceed now with your encephalopathies. So in your encephalopathies, so basically they are just your uh, group of diseases or group of disorder that can be found in the brain, okay, or in the head area. So number one is actually your Alzheimer's disease. So in your Alzheimer's disease, this has been found out that we have what we call the presence of your amyloid protein. So when we talk about amyloid, these are just your doka plaque bala or scars that is actually forming in between the neurons of your brain. So they are like cavities in our ano bala? In our teeth, or these are actually beta pleated proteins into which nagsala ang ila folding. So they are specifically going to be a useful protein, but somehow the folding became disorderly. So that's why they became amyloid plaques or they became cavities. Okay. So as you can see here in our illustration, so a normal neuron or a normal brain looks like this. So you have neurons in betweens. So the neurons in between here, there will be astrocytes, different kind of structures in our brain. So in here, in your Alzheimer's disease, they are seeing that there is the formation of your amyloid plaques. So with the formation of these amyloid plaques, ang gakatabo ni or plaques is that actually they are contagious with each other. So if this part develop a plaque, so certainly the other parts will also develop plaque up until such time that your whole brain uh will be will be having all of this plaque, and then ano matabo, syempre all of your neuron function will deteriorate. So that's why those people having Alzheimer's disease, they are forgetting somehow how to control their sphincters. So those people who have accelerated Alzheimer's disease, ano gakatabo, kis aga pangihi lang sila on their own. So without having control sa ilang bladder sphincter. So kis aga pamuson lang man sila, kis aga laway sila. So almost all of our functions in our brain are affected. So the first thing nga symptom would be also your memory loss. So I think if you've watched your Grey's Anatomy, ang mama balada ni Meredith, she has Alzheimer's disease. So they are always in this state into which they cannot remember everything. So somehow may gakadumduman lang sila sa past, but all of their memories are still there, pero ang the past na siya, but they can't remember the person right now or the recent happenings. Okay? Next. So, with your Alzheimer's disease, actually, I've shared this in Facebook. There is a link now that it has been studied that your Alzheimer's disease wala labot sa misfolding of your proteins, such as your beta-pleated proteins in the brain. What happens during Alzheimer's disease is that it is now considered as your type 3 diabetes. So this is an update sa ato niya medical field. So I was amazed when I read it because it's quite true. Because Alzheimer's disease now, it is type 3 disease, it means, or diabetes, I mean, it means that your neuron is not able to be sensitive to your insulin. Remember, your insulin is the key to your cell in order for the glucose to enter. So if you don't have enough insulin, or if you don't respond to insulin, what happens is that your neuron will just eventually die. So during Alzheimer's disease, amo na siyang gakatabo, our neuron deteriorates up until such time that it will undergo necrosis. It means that it will die on its own. So scientists have found out that during Alzheimer's disease, the neurons cannot be responsive to your insulin. So therefore, it is a type 3 kind of diabetes. So, dra lang nila nabalaan nga, ay, may type 1, type 2 ta. Usually, your type 1, it's all about deficiency of insulin. So, sa pancreas ang problema. Your type 2, it's all about our peripheral cells into which they are not sensitive enough to insulin. Therefore, promoting or not promoting the entry of your glucose. So, the person cannot metabolize your sugar, it just stays on your blood. So, trivial na siya. So, Alzheimer's disease is now considered type 3 diabetes along with the misfolding of your proteins or your amyloid plaque. So, or your plaque. So, now, you just have to maintain your sugar levels. Guys, as early as now, do not dwell into taking in too much sugar food. Wow, grabe makalaygay, pero pala milk tea ako gani guys and stuff. So, in moderation na nga. Okay, so we'll proceed. So this is how it looked like. looks like if you illustrate it or when you look at it sa NMR, ang mga high class na ganyan technology. So, kumbaga, may cavity lang nga naga-tapik sa aton neuron cells. Okay? So, do gina-drag down niya ang metabolism. Do ka competitive enzyme inhibition tabalang iyagwa. Okay? So, in here, next, we have what we call your transmissible spongiform encephalopathies. So, this is still under the misfolding of your proteins. So, due to the misfolding of protein again in our brain, so there's this certain strand of protein lang na misfold, and then they will be contagious. So, all of the proteins in the brain would become misfolded also. So, in here, the misfolded protein that we are talking about would be now called your prion or prion. So, this is now the template for converting normal protein into pathogenic condition. As I've said, this becomes now the contagious misfolded proteins. So, all those protein that are healthy will now become pathogenic. So, whenever there is misfolding in your proteins, panumdumon mo na lang. Normal, dapat nimo nga protein structure, amo ni siya dapat. Naka-beta helix, dapat naka-beta pleated. Iya yan butang tabi nag-hexagon siya ya. Or it became a certain structure that is not being read by the body. So, of course, your body will suffer. So, it is called Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease in human. So, usually, genetics nisa kuno guys, pagbata sa imo, it's either there, or maybe, along the way, you've reached 11 years old, 12 years old, tapos nag-evolve ang amo na nga masakit. So, may nag-una da misfold sa imo brain up until such time all of your protein in the brain would misfold. So, it is also called scrapie in sheep. So, may ara man ni siya nga category sa aton nga mga animals, and also mad cow disease in your cattle. So, it's called mad cow disease because those cow infected or those cow having this misfolded protein in their brain, what happens to them is they actually go mad. So, nagawangal ni sila out of nowhere. So, sila ni mga baris nga baka. Okay? Next. So, this is how it looks like. So, as you can see here, the color blue here represents your misfolded prion proteins. Okay? So, sila ni mga misfolded up until such time that they will be attached to normal prion proteins, or they will influence this normal prion proteins up until such time na tanan-tanan sila nag-misfold na. So, if they surround now our neuron, what happens is, of course, ma-impede man ang aton memory and other capacity nga ginahimo ta. Okay? So, ari gali ho, may ara man brain shrinkage. Imagine, if your brain shrinks, paano ka na lang mag-answer sa mga quiz mo subong, di ba? Do ka budlay man. But actually, syempre speech mo gid una ang maano, tapos do buang-buang ka nga do idubuang amo na siya magwa sa imo. So, in here, as you can see, brain section showing spongiform pathology characteristic of your Creutzfeldt-Jakob. So, it means that ang mga buho-buho, di ba? It means nga wala na siya protein bilin. Kaya nagkala misfold na. So, there are spaces in your brain, therefore, promoting brain shrinkage. So, there are just two under our encephalopathies regarding with your protein correlation. So, now let's go with your hemoglobinopathies. It means that these are your disorders in the blood. So, we just have only three. We have your sickle cell, methemoglobinemia, and your thalassemia. So, the first one is sickle cell anemia. So, sickle cell because the real shape of your hemoglobin is in crescent shape form. Hindi crescent shape. I mean, it's in circle form. So, I think you've seen already your healthy red blood cell. So, those people diagnosed with sickle cell anemia, they have this red blood cell. So, they look siya niyang crescent shape. So, this one, or this RBC is in crescent shape form. So, what happens is actually, this crescent shape form has the tendency to accumulate on the blood vessels, or in the pathway of your blood vessels, into which they are going to block the areas. Kaya tungod sa iya nga structure. Mas hapos sila mag-coagulate or aggregate with each other, therefore, impeding blood flow. So, of course, if you have impeding blood flow, what happens? You are prone to stroke, you are prone to heart attack, and also, you are anemic. Nga anemic ka kung naka-sickle cell ang imo nga RBC. It's because your oxygen does not bind well to your sickle cell. Okay? Because in a healthy cell, usually there are 4 oxygen that we could carry. Okay? Sa ato niya sickle cell anemia, isa lang ang kaya ya i-bind sa iyang system. So next, what else? So your sickle cell anemia is recessive. It means that both gene came from the parents, from the recessive gene of your parents. So do ikaw gid ang namalasan. Sa kadamo-damo sang dominante nga gene ang recessive gid tanan ang nasalo mo. So it has something to do with the beta globin mutation. So this is how a hemoglobin looks like. So may ara ka duwa ka beta globin chain and you have your 2 alpha globin chain. Your alpha 1, alpha 2, beta 1, beta 2 globin chain. So in your sickle cell mutation, so maybe sa ini nga beta globin or beta 2 globin, it depends, may nagmutate da nga area or may DNA da nga na misread. Okay? So the moment nga may misread lang na da, so for example, si glutamate dapat ang sa sining area, but ginreplace siya ni lysine. So this will be a different compound. So therefore, instead nga ma-healthy itsura, amo ni itsura due to an error in your beta globin part of your hemoglobin. Okay, gets na? So sickle cell anemia because irregular ang shapes ng imo RBC and your oxygen cannot bind well. So therefore, you are anemic since hindi ka provide mayo oxygen sa lawas. Okay, next. We have your methemoglobinemia. So actually, when we talk about methemoglobinemia, we are talking about the term methemoglobin here, as talandi, methemoglobin, into which your methemoglobin is actually the oxidized form of your hemoglobin. So si hemoglobin ko nga normal has a ferrous in its structure. Again, hemoglobin has ferrous on its structure. Let's go back to the, okay, here. There is an iron atom attached to your hemoglobin. Iron. Sa taga globin mo ni bila, sa taga subunit mo ni, there is an iron entity, but specifically it is in ferrous form. It is your Fe2+. Fe2+. But when it is oxidized, it means that it is going to Leora. It means that it is going to lose some of its electron. It will gain a proton. Therefore, it will become an Fe3+ state. It will become oxidized. It will become ferric form. Your ferrous becomes ferric. Therefore, if ferric ni siya ang aride, it becomes methemoglobin. If hemoglobin ka lang niya, Fe2+ ang ara din nimo. Kung methemoglobin ka, it will be replaced with Fe3+. You will become the ferric form. So now, what happens? This is quite dangerous because during the ferric form, what happens is that your body cannot bind now the oxygen. So ano matabo si mo? Of course, you will become a smurf. Literally, you will become blue. Color blue si tatay, as you can see, because your body is not accepting now your oxygen. So your methemoglobin does not bind with your oxygen, rather it binds with your cyanide 100 times more. Okay? Again, you become blue because your body cannot now bind your oxygen, and your methemoglobin has affinity to your cyanide about 100 times. So now, this kind of situation, if you have methemoglobinemia, is quite advantageous if you are having cyanide poisoning. So may ara man ta mga instances, those people who are working in sa mga planta, sa mga rubbers, sa mga kundi indang area containing cyanide, usually ang cyanide kaka-inhale mo, those people poisoned by cyanide can actually be treated if they have methemoglobinemia. So usually your methemoglobinemia is being induced. It means that we are going to make a person have a methemoglobin present in her or his body. So for a person to have methemoglobinemia, we are actually inducing it via giving these drugs. So you can give them nitrate derivatives or your nitrite derivatives. So mga bulong nga may ara nitrite. So usually ginagamit ni is your nitroglycerin. So your nitroglycerin is a vasodilator drug, and also your sulfonamides, dapsone. So examples ni siya. So sila ni nga drug, ang ginahimo nila is to oxidize your hemoglobin to your methemoglobin via converting ferrous to ferric form. Okay? Pero usually, this is really dangerous. Ginagamit tala ni siya nga method if ever a certain person has cyanide poisoning. But kung wala yung cyanide poisoning ang isa ka person, tapos, ang natabo lang is, may hemoglobin siya to methemoglobinemia. Anong matabo? You will have loss of oxygen. You will become a smurf. Tapos, it would lead to death. So, sometimes yung methemoglobinemia happens naturally because you have a deficiency of this enzyme, the NADH cytochrome beta 5 reductase. So, it's the one responsible into converting back your methemoglobin to hemoglobin. So naturally in our body, we go into hemoglobin to methemoglobin, methemoglobin to hemoglobin in balance. But during methemoglobinia, more of our methemoglobin is being formed rather than your hemoglobin. So, gets na? So, usually, your antidote for cyanide poisoning would be your amyl nitrite. Amyl nitrite. Aral na siya sa notes nyo sa dalom. So, gets lang ha? Okay. Next. Lastly, we have your thalassemia under your hemoglobinopathies, into which your thalassemia is actually just a disease into which your RBC is not being well produced, or some of your RBC suicides before 120 days. So guys, noted, inote nyo nga ang aton nga red blood cells, they actually replenish every 120 days. It means that it kills itself every 120 days because we would want to make another batch of your RBC. That's why do not be afraid into donating blood every 3 months, because your body, if you're just healthy enough, we are producing more of your RBC every 3 months. Okay? So now, in your thalassemia, what happens is just that araho doesn't make enough of your hemoglobin. Ang ato niya lawas wala produce enough of your RBC or your hemoglobin. Therefore, making you lack of oxygen. Okay, basta. So making you deprived of oxygen. So that's the term. Okay? So making you deprived of oxygen. So syempre may friend man ko nga may thalassemia, so I know her. So, sometimes, ginagaan naman lang sila maintenance, such as your folic acid. So, your folic acid would help into production of your hemoglobin. Okay? So, alpha and beta, because your alpha, some of the proteins or amino acid in your alpha chain, sang aton hemoglobin to nga nakita gina, may nagmutate to, or it is decreased or absent sa aton nga structure, or your beta globin in your hemoglobin is decrease or absent also. So, may mutation lang nga natabo na naman, either sa alpha or sa beta nga chain. So, thalassemia is also a recessive gene into which both your parent carries this. So, it's not evident sa magulang, para sabi apat ka mo kabilog. So, sa magulang mo, sa middle child, tapos ikaw pinakamanghuran, nagtupagin si mo ang duwa ka AA nga gene. So, it's a recessive gene. And this is how it looks like. Si sickle cell tayo crescent form, si thalassemia tayo ka square form. Okay? So, it also has something to do with the binding of oxygen and some of your hemoglobin or RBCs resides fast. Okay? So, that's it for the hemoglobinopathies. And lastly, we have your collagen diseases. We just have two under this. We have your Ehlers-Danlos and we have your osteogenesis imperfecta. So, both has something to do with collagen. So, it just depends on the type of collagen. We have 3 types of collagen. We have your type 1, type 2, and your type 3. Okay? So, type 1 is the most common. Type 2 is found in your blood vessels or in your cartilages because it has more fibrils or more fibers that could offer tensile strength. And your type 3 is just actually your another type of type 1 nga makita mo man sa mga parehas nga area. So they can be used together, your type 1 and type 3, to be a supplement or to be a treatment to skin diseases and other stuff nga kinahanglan sang collagen. So next, so in your Ehlers-Danlos, what you just have to remember is that it has a mutation of amino acid sequences sa imo type 3 nga collagen. So this is how a type 1 looks like. So, do parehas naman sa type 3. So, there's just something wrong sa ato niya sequencing sang imo amino acid. Okay? So, in your Ehlers-Danlos, these are your symptoms. So, you have loose joints, joint pain, stretchy velvety skin, and abnormal scar formation. So, as you can see, Do kumbaga tamaan si mo ka flexible because you don't have enough nga good collagen sa imo lawas. So di ba nagani ginihimo ta? You drink collagen, ihaplos mo collagen sa imo nga skin in order for you to become plumper, to become stretchy, di ba? So in here, nga katabo sa tao is loose ang iyang nga skin. So it's not well attached to the dermis area, di ba? So that's it. Hindi gali dermis area sa aton nga lipids and aton mga bone area. Okay, so next we have your osteogenesis imperfecta, into which, so this is the other term for this would be your brittle bone syndrome. So it affects the alpha 1 or pro alpha 2 chains of your type 1. Sa type 1 naman siya giigo. So in here, it's either nga sa chaining sang imo alpha 1 kag sa alpha 2 mo may diferensya man gyapon sa sequencing. Bali sa type 1 lang siya natabo. So those people who have osteogenesis imperfecta, they do not grow tall, of course, because taas ilang spinal cord hindi mag-grow mayo because brittle ila bones. So kung magtaas ka tama imo bones, dali ma-break. So usually you have type 1 to type 4. So type 1 mild depende sa severity or sa appearance ng isa ka tao with osteogenesis imperfecta. So usually they just grow up until here. Up until here, okay? So as you can see, do ka mga dwarf lang sa ila kadagko. But your dwarfism should not be confused with your osteogenesis imperfecta because in your dwarfism, we have other pathophysiology for it. Si dwarfism, yeah, it's all about deficiency of your growth hormone. Si osteoimperfecta, yeah, it's all about the collagen and the brittleness of your bone. Okay, so lainay ang pagdiagnose sa ila. So that's it for our clinical protein correlations.